I invite you to stand and join with me in singing our opening hymn 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our certain meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek truth in a spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart. I invite you to turn and greet your neighbor and say, Happy Mother's Day. Well, good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Delaware County in Pennsylvania, not in Delaware. I always get confused where I am. It's good to have everyone here, and I want to extend a special welcome to anyone who may be visiting for the first time. It's especially good to have you at our worship service. This is the best church in media, so you've come to the right place. And we are glad to have you here. We're going to have coffee hour this morning after the service in the outdoor area because the weather is so beautiful. And we're also going to spend a few minutes rededicating our memorial garden. You're welcome to participate. The ceremony is very short. You can see it in the order of service. And with that, let us sing our centering song.
Ooh, I'm right in the sun. All right, I'm going to move over here to do the talking part. On this Mother's Day, let us honor all mothers who, from somewhere in their being, have freely and wholeheartedly given life and sustenance and vision to us. When we all have such people in our lives, whether they were the mothers who gave us birth or someone else. Some of us are fortunate enough to have that person still in our lives, and others have had to experience the pain and loss of their mother or mother figure. There are also those here whose memories of their mothers are less than the idealized vision we find on greeting cards. Perhaps your mother was absent from your life. Maybe their skills as a nurturer were lacking. Some of us harbor wishes that our experience and relationship with our mothers was something other than what it was. We now take time to remember those who, with both tenderness and ferocity, have mothered us and are no longer with us. We do this by building a bouquet of roses in the empty vase you see to my right. It's right in the script, that's good. And speaking your mother's name into the microphone so that their spirit may be brought into our presence today. We also want to honor those whose relationships with their mothers were less than they hoped. If you have a wish that your relationship with your mother, living or dead, is or was different than it is or was, I invite you to silently drop a stone representing that wish into the bowl of water on my left. Please feel free to both add a flower to our bouquet and drop a stone if that's appropriate to you. You may come down the side aisle and go back to your seat through the center aisle.
Patricia Davies.
Dorothy Martin and Hilda George.
Dorothy Chuplis, and Esther Ray.
Viola Schottler and Adele Gabajdi Florio.
Marion Keister.
Catherine Pesci and Margaret Donnelly, and the birth mothers of my 2 adopted kids.
Dorothy Jane Hartsfield. Janet Mocked.
Gladys, Patricia, and Andrea.
Happy birthday, my mom.
Louise Demarest.
Janelle Grissom.
Fannie Lewis.
Priscilla Greeley Hopkirk.
Mary Terry Day.
Millie and Shirley.
Ruth Olson.
Pick a flag.
I'll get it for you. Modesta Diaz de Rosa.
Evelyn Birch Peterson.
Kathy Seeloss.
Estelle Gould and Martha Demas.
Joanne Lloyd.
Betty Wyman.
Irene Rischel.
Angela Rutledge and Helen Pham.
Hazel McMartin.
Kathleen Henderson.
Lena Herzog and Norma Wolf.
Mary Elizabeth McHugh Mooney.
Lucille Shanek.
Olive Hanson.
Ruth Moorhead Farling.
Jacqueline Ferguson.
Leilani Hoey and June Yerger.
Beatrice Schechtman Goldstein.
Coralie and Gladys.
Jeannie Sloat.
Mary Mutter Kane.
The beautiful Kay Clinton.
Alice Cusick and Winifred Finn.
Olga Ramos and Mary Hagenbuch.
Amen.
At the end of the service, we invite you to come forward and take one of the flowers on this table. And now I will do the blessing that Norbert Chapik wrote for the flower communion 100 years ago. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these, thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts, to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship. But may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world. Amen. Let's join in singing Spirit of Life. Now is the time for our offering. The Share the Plate recipient for May is the Pennsylvania Horticulture Society, which uses horticulture to advance the health and well-being of the Philadelphia region, buying land and growing gardens to help food insecurity. It's working with the local Tyler Arboretum at Lucille's Garden to provide fresh food to the Media Food Bank. Share the Plate includes the plate collection on the second Sunday, which is today, and any funds sent via text. We don't have a plate actually anymore, do we? We have just send the text, or you can put money in a box in the back as you're leaving the service today. The text information is on the screen. Thank you.
morning. Our story today is from Kristen Meyer from her book, A Good Telling. Long ago, there was a kingdom with a very kind king. And in this kingdom, there was a valley where beautiful flowers grew. The most beautiful, fragrant flowers you can imagine grew in this valley in the kingdom. And in the valley, there was a market, a village. And in the village, there was a market. And in the market, there was an inspector, a royal inspector who was inspecting the market because the king was going to come and visit. And the royal inspector wanted everything to be absolutely perfect. He wanted all of the fruits and vegetables in the fruit and vegetable stall to be the ripest, most luscious fruits and vegetables you could imagine. He wanted all the cloth and clothing to be vibrant and beautiful and perfectly tailored. And he wanted the flowers to be the most gorgeous, perfect flowers you can imagine. And as he looked around the market, he was pretty satisfied. Things looked very, very good. Now, in a forgotten corner of the valley, where no one really went anymore, there was a house and a garden and a little girl named Petulia who lived there with her mother and her brothers and her sisters. Now, Petulia loved her home and her garden. It was the most beautiful garden that you could imagine. She loved all living things, and she loved to just spend time with the growing flowers, watching the earthworms move around, watching the field mice. But on this day, Petulia's mother told her she could not stay in the garden and play. She needed to go to the market and sell some flowers to get a little money for the family. And so she did. But on her way out of the garden, she stopped at the brindleberry bush, and she collected a few brindleberry flowers, and she wove their long stems together to make a garland, and she put it in her hair, and she made a few more to sell. And off she went to the market. As she walked along the cobblestones, she saw on the ground a tiny little black beetle, a shiny beetle, and she worried because there on the cobblestones in the market, the beetle could get trampled. So she stooped down to pick it up and move it somewhere a little safer. And as she was doing so, and she was concentrating on the beetle, and she was kind of moving forward, she bumped right into someone with long black robes. It was the inspector, the royal inspector, and he turned around and he said, "Who are you and why do you have weeds in your hair?" And Petulia looked up at him and she said, "I am Petulia, and these are brindleberry flowers." And she held up her garlands and she said, "A penny a garland." And he said, "Look at those weeds, those long, green, ropey stems. Those are not very nice, and those flowers are so tiny and puny. They look nothing like the good flowers that we want in our market. Why, look over there at the flowers at that stall. They are so big and bright. The blossoms are full." Now the woman, the flower seller working at the stall, just started to kind of glow. And she said, "Oh, those are the Bella Bella flowers. And I'll tell you something. The last time the king visited the marketplace, he remarked on how wonderful my flowers are." She was very excited. And the inspector said, "See," to Petulia, "see, this is what I'm saying. The Bella Bella flowers are beautiful, and the flowers you have are puny." Now the very next day, there was a proclamation read in the village square, and it said that from now on, the only flowers that they could have in the whole valley were the Bella Bella flowers. All other flowers would be considered weeds, and in fact, the royal weed commissioner would be going around digging up all the other flowers and planting only Bella Bella flowers. Now, this royal proclamation was not read in that tiny, forgotten corner of the valley where Petulia's family lived. They had no idea this was going on and didn't really care. But everywhere else in the valley, people went around digging up any other flower, disposing of it, and planting the Bella Bellas instead. Now, a few weeks went by, and it was time for the king's visit, and the royal inspector was so excited. He had spent so much time working on this, and he looked around, and the fruits and vegetables gleamed, and the clothes and the cloth were so majestic, and the flower stall was empty. There were no flowers at all. And he said to the flower stall owner, he said, "What happened? Why are there no flowers?" And she said, "Oh, well, didn't you hear? The Bella Bella fungus has affected all of the Bella Bella plants. They are all dead and wilted. I have no flowers to sell." And the inspector said, "How can you not have flowers? It's time for the king's visit. We need flowers." And she said, "There just are not any Bella Bella flowers." He said, "Well, find some other flowers." And she said, "Well, all the other flowers were outlawed." And he said, "Who would do?" Oh. And then he remembered that he would do such a thing. The inspector was devastated. He went walking down the road to see if anywhere, maybe he could find a flower that was missed by the king's weed commissioner, but the king's weed commissioner was very thorough, and he could not find any flowers. All he saw were wilted, dying bella flowers. And he said out loud to himself, "What have I done? What have I done?" And he felt a tap, tap, tap on his shoulder. And there was Petulia holding up one of her brindleberry flower garlands and saying, "Penny a garland." The inspector said, where did you find those? Where did you get them?" And Petulia said, "I'll show you." And she walked him over to her garden, and he was amazed. There in the garden was every flower imaginable, growing perfectly, including a bella plant that had been unaffected by the fungus because it was off to itself. Just then they heard the sound of the king's carriage moving along the road. The inspector went running and brought the king to the garden and showed him the wonderful flowers. Petulia gave the king a garland, and he put it over his crown. He was so pleased. The next day there was a new proclamation in town, and it said two things. The first thing was that there was a new royal gardener, and it was Petulia's mother. And the second thing it said was that from now on, all flowers are welcome to grow anywhere in the kingdom, because a garden needs all the flowers to be beautiful. Thank you for listening to my story today.
Picture in your mind the earth 400 million years ago. Part of the earth was covered with muck and ooze. There were no flowers as you can see from this recently discovered photograph. Slowly, tiny cells arose in vats of warm, slimy mud, the soup of creation. Millions of years flashed by. The cold, monotonous green of plant life, with no variety of color, crawled forth. Gradually, over tens of millions of years, forests of ferns and trees covered the land. Little spawls developed on the surface of leaves, little spores, or at the end of short stalks. When it was time to pollinate, they would fall into the streams. They would float randomly in the water. And over millions of years, these tiny spores emerged from the soup of creation. They found their way through the dew and the raindrops. They hardened, the wind carried them, and they spread an incredible revolution. Trees grew and developed cones to protect the seeds. When it was time to pollinate the seeds, they traveled randomly in the air over hills and valleys. It was gray, brown, black, green, but no explosions of color. But sometime, now we're still working on the exact date, sometime between 140 and 250 million years ago, a time when the planet was warmer and richer with oxygen than today, plants' leaves started to create scents, smells, sugars, and colors to attract insects that would effectively transfer their pollen. And the first flowers started to appear. Now, over time, the world was transformed into strange colors that produced tantalizing nectars and pollens. With the help of insects, the age of flowers started. Evolution suddenly transformed the world into a panoply of strange colors that produced the tantalizing nectars and pollens. To better reach the flowers, insects evolved wings. Over time, specialized groups of insects and birds arose to feed on the flowering plants. As they pollinated the seeds, the flowers bloomed in spectacular varieties. Some were night flowers intended to lure moths in the evening. Some were flaming red in the light of noon. Hummingbirds evolved different beak sizes to go with certain types of flowers. Around 225 million years ago, the first true mammals began to appear, perhaps around the time of the arrival of flowers. Our ancestors were mossy little creatures, eating bugs and plants with seeds. There was no Adam, no Eve. They were encased in a rat-like body. Over millions of years, flowering plants evolved to take advantage of mammals. After the flowers are pollinated by insects, the flowers grew into fruit with seeds in the middle, and the mammals ate the fruit. The fruit gave us a good source of energy, At first, our mammal ancestors could only see in black and white. However, over time, we evolved to be sensitive to color. Then, it was easier to see the fruit and tell if it was ripe. The flowering fruit gave us a good source of energy. We could trace the evolution of our hands back 70 million years with small ancestors that lived on the ground and evolved hands so they could climb trees and harvest the fruit that the flowers produced. Our brains got bigger. Leaves, if we just eat leaves, the nutrients are locked up behind thick cell walls. And breaking down those barriers, it takes a lot of energy and time for our bodies to do. Primates that eat leaves have to lie around for hours resting with all their energy going towards digestion. Eating fruit, on the other hand, offers us a jolt of calories, an easy-to-digest package. The main beneficiary of all that newly available energy is our brains. Today, in our bodies, there's a strong affinity for flowering plants of the earth. We evolved to feel intense joy at the sight of bright, colorful flowers because they are a source of food that helps make our survival possible. In flowers, we see the miracle of growth, the exhilaration of bloom, the excitement of color, the fulfillment of ripening. We enjoy the smell, the feel, the shape, and the color of the flower. We give flowers to our mothers as an expression of thanks, because mothers also make our life possible. In 1923, at the Unitarian Church in Prague, a minister created the first flower communion. Each member would bring a flower to church, where it was placed in a large central vase. At the end of the service, each would take home a different flower. This symbolized the uniqueness of each individual and the coming together in community to share this uniqueness. American Unitarian Universalist churches have adopted this annual spring flower celebration. So now I invite you to come forward and take one flower without making any distinction where it came from and whom it represents, to confess that we accept each other as brothers and sisters without regard to class, race, or other distinction, acknowledging everybody as a friend who is human and wants to do good. Let's have the choir go first as they're able to do so, and then we'll go front row, second row, and so on. Let's stand and sing our closing hymn, Simple Gifts. Let's join in our closing words. For those who come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those who come embracing life, may life return your affection. And for those who come to seek a path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step. Blessed be. I invite you, if you're able to do so, to join me in the memorial garden for its rededication.